have been literally leaning against our French windows, as I said, since about 7:15 this morning.
Martin, thanks a lot for sharing that. Just stay there.
11 o'clock.
It's Martin in Denniston. Stay there, Martin, and have a listen, because Transport Minister Keith Brown is on the line now from the Scottish Government. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning.
Whereabouts are you phoning from?
From Dollar in central Scotland.
OK, is that where the special bunker is?
No, that's the Transport Scotland headquarters is in Glasgow. That's got the full marked on there just now, which is the multi-agency response team, which involves the police, the trunk road operating companies, the train companies and others.
So what's happening in Dollar?
Well, we've got very high winds here in central Scotland, and also in place the warning from the police not to travel. That's true both in central Scotland and in Strathclyde. So
you're heeding that warning and you're staying in Dollar there?
I'm getting the constant updates from Transport Scotland, and we'll be going through to the Transport Scotland control room as soon as conditions allow, yes.
Now, we heard from the Met Office, and they were talking about the escalation for their colour-coded warning system. And I'm just wondering at what point you realised it was going to be bad today?
Well, yesterday we had the warning from the Met Office. It was going to be an amber alert, high speeds up to perhaps 80 miles an hour. But it was only this morning, in fact, after the high speeds occurred, that we got the red alert warning from the Met. They sent that through just after 8 o'clock this morning, so that's when things escalated. But by that time, of course, the winds had already got hold. I've listened to your programme this morning, and you'll have heard, as I did, the Met say that this gathered speed very suddenly during the course of the night, and that's why they issued the red alert warning this morning.
So that sudden escalation has caught you out?
Well, it's not caught us out. We have to go based on the advice that we get from the Met. The Met's advice yesterday was it was an amber alert, and we took appropriate precautions. We put media alerts out, and some media got back in touch with us, and I spoke to some media about that last night. But at that point, the Met were saying around 80 miles an hour. What we've seen this morning is that escalation, and as you've heard, up to over 100 miles an hour at Blackford. I think you'd have heard that from Alec Hill in your own programme.
I certainly did, Minister. So can you just explain for everybody then, in terms of your preparation and the procedures that you took in place, what do you do differently for 100 mile an hour wind that you don't do at 80?
Well, I think there's another programme we had earlier this week that told you that when you go slightly above 80, that's when you really start to get a difference in the effect of the high winds. So what we do, of course, is first of all, we rely on the Met's advice. If it's a red alert, then that means that we're telling people they should not travel. If it's an amber alert, what we're saying is if you do travel, it's a very high level of likelihood for disruption to transport. But that red alert, as we saw for the first time in December, was a case of telling people you should not travel because it's too dangerous, whether it's through falling trees or whether it's through power lines going down or bridges being closed. You should not travel for your own safety. And that is the change that occurs when we get that advice from the Met.
So the Met Office said 80 and you said, well, that's okay then?
No, we never said that's okay. We put out, I think you'd have received yourself in the BBC, you'd have received the warning from the government last night that we're going to have around 80 mile an hour winds, and that there was an amber warning alert in place. And the various preparations which the government and its agencies have put in place, for example, transport teams around the country to make sure that we can, for example, recover fallen trees from roads and rail as quickly as possible. What's happened this morning is the Met have upgraded that alert to a red alert, and that's meant there's been a change, obviously, and people can see the effect of that this morning. Many of your callers themselves have said they've never seen winds like this, and of course that the change has occurred overnight. And
in terms of what you do now, Minister, we've got the Kingston Bridge closed, we've got other bridges closed, a lot of overturned lorries. How do you, I suppose the job now is coordinating, getting a bit of normality back once things settle down. How do you go about that?
Well, first of all, with the overturned lorries, which are a problem, and there's one which has obviously had a spillage, which we're covered just now as well, those have to be dealt with first of all before we can reopen roads and bridges. As far as the bridges are concerned, which I understand will be causing substantial disruption, I think one of your callers earlier on said they'd never heard of the Kingston Bridge being closed in both directions. Well, what they'll have to wait on is for the weather to abate. There's no other way around that. It's just a safety issue to make sure that we can get people across central Scotland safely. So, on the one hand, we have to wait for the weather to abate. On the other hand, there is work ongoing just now by people that are putting themselves, around the country in very difficult conditions to make sure they recover vehicles, take them out of the way. And also the same will be true in terms of rail as well. We'll have many fallen trees, I'm sure, across the rail tracks, and those will have to be recovered by specialist teams. So that work is ongoing now. And as soon as we can get these transport routes reopened, as weather abates, so we'll get people moving around the country again.
And does it help that operation if people stay off the roads in the meantime?
It does, and of course it helps the fact that it's a lighter traffic day because of the fact that it's, for some people at least, it's the last day of the holidays. Many other people have been working through the break. but for some people, they'll still be off on holiday, and that will help matters, as it will do the patience that the public have shown by the call that's now been made by the police and others to make sure there is no travel in certain areas. Their cooperation is really appreciated because it makes it easier for the crews to get about their business as well.
I know it's not strictly your remit, Transport Minister, but people are concerned about power outages, and I know that you're part of the coordination and you'll be part of the discussions. People want to know, when's my power going to go back on? Do you have any information about the sort of procedure there?
Well, as I say, we do have specialist teams. We have all the power companies involved, as we've seen over the course of December, have extra people on standby to make sure they can recover power wherever they can. Mainly it's caused, as you'll know, by trees falling onto power lines, and that can take some time to recover. But some of the excellent work that was done in December means that they are well prepared for this, and they will get the power put back on as quickly as possible. Obviously, sometimes, for example, in Shetland and sometimes in the Western Isles, we've seen a bit more time taken for other reasons to get that power back on, but we're hopeful that the power companies, with whom we're talking regularly, will have a further meeting at 10 o'clock this morning and one again after that to discuss how things are going and to better coordinate the response. But work is ongoing just now to make sure people can be put back onto the grid as soon as possible.
Okay, I just wonder the fact that this escalated, which I guess you can't do anything about when the wind's going to do whatever the wind does. There's only so much planning you can do. But the fact that this happened and it has caused some disruption, might this change? You're learning all the time. Might this make a difference to the way you deal with these things in future?
I think I've always said that each incident that we have, and of course during the course of this year we've had high winds, we've had very heavy rain in August, we've had very high winds in May. We've had, obviously, the snow from last year. We learn from each of these experiences, and the point about being resilient is trying to make sure we're ready for any eventuality, not just the last one that we had. So, yes, we do learn from each of these experiences. But I noticed that the BBC themselves are reporting today that we've seen around 30 severe weather warnings over the course of the last year, and that is unprecedented, around 3 times the normal level. So it's quite clear we're going through a period of very difficult weather, and each one that we have to respond to should improve our response.
Okay, it's 2 minutes to 10. This is Call Kate on BBC Radio Scotland. That's the Transport Minister, Keith Brown, giving us an update on the efforts that he's doing, him and his team, to get us through a very severe situation this morning. If you've any reaction to his comments, you can call me and take part this morning, 0500 92 95 00. He was making the point there that they were prepared and they issued guidance regarding 80 mile an hour winds and an amber alert from the Met Office last night around 7 or 8 p.m. The Met Office then upgraded that warning just after 8 a.m. this morning when the severe winds had already hit. They upgraded that. They issued their red warning at just after 8 a.m. 0500 92 95 00. You can also send a text message to 802.